Alright, hey everybody, this is Emehe and welcome to a brand new video on Oxygen Not Included. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to use a Thermo Aquatuner. On top of that, I am also going to be showing you how to use a thermal regulator right there because they're pretty much the same thing. They're very similar, as we know. So if we go ahead and start off with this guy, starting off with power, which is not very important. They do take a lot. The Thermo Aquatuner takes an insane amount of power, which is 1,700 watts, which is much more than one of the power transformers can take. So I always like to try and hook mine up to their very own large power transformer. As you can see, if we come up here, I have a large power transformer, and the only thing it's really powering besides this pump, which is never on, is the Thermo Aquatuner. That's just something I like to do to be safe, but you don't have to. But if you do put more onto one conductive wire, chances are it will overload because this will take up pretty much one wire. And when you use these, the majority of the time you're going to want to build them out of steel because they're going to be built in something that looks like this. And in a room like this, it's going to get very hot and eventually it's going to turn into steam. So you want to make sure you build these out of steel in the majority of cases. But let's get into the fun part. Let's get into the liquid part of it, the main part of it, the input and output. So let me go ahead and get us some power. So there we go. Now we have a little bit of power. And what this will do is if I go ahead and input this water, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly set up a liquid reservoir just so it has somewhere to go. And as you can see, if I pump water into there, this water is starting at about 80 degrees Celsius. What this will do is it will cool it down roughly 25 degrees. I have a mod to where I can change that, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it on negative 25. There we go. So if we go ahead and look at this water, it's at about 54.8 degrees, which is right where we want it. So that's the majority. So that's how this works, right? The main thing with this is what it does is it takes the temperature from the water and it outspurts it, or it radiates it out to the environment. As you can see, the environment is getting very hot. So a setup that a lot of people like to do is they like to do something like this. If I just go ahead and place one of these down fresh, they have one of these in a vacuum, right? So that no other gases can get in and it's sealed off. And then you put about 400, this is just my rule of thumb, 400 kilograms of tile on the bottom tile for it. And then what this will do is this will take in, so if I go ahead and pump in some liquid, I know this looks a little bit different, I'll explain it. If I go ahead and pump in our liquid, it's gonna come in at 80, just like before, and it's gonna loop around. And what this does is this liquid pipe thermosensor is set to send a green signal if the contents of the pipe are above 80. So what that means is that if the contents of the pipe are above 44. If the contents of the pipe are above 44 degrees, the thermal aquatuner will turn on. So what I can do is I can change this. If I might want my water to be 100 degrees, I can put it to that. And then this won't turn on. See, it's disabled by the automation grid, and the water just waltz on through, right? 80 degrees. But if I set it to something like 40, right? Nope, 40, it will cool it down, right? And then the water coming out is 54. And then when it goes back around, it will still be on a green signal. And now the reason that I have this liquid bridge here, let me show you what that does, is the reason that people do that is because if I were to just leave it like this, right, it would cool it down just like normal. But as soon as it gets a red signal because it's too cold, the water flow will stop, which a lot of times is not what you want to happen. The way to combat that is you bring an input in and then you go out from the input and you put a liquid bridge into the output. So that way, even if this machine is turned off, it will still have a way over, if that makes sense. And then, as you can see, even though it's turned off, it's still going around. And now we have 30 degree water. And like I said, this will heat up the environment and it will eventually turn this into steam. And when that happens, the steam turbine will then suck it up and output the power, right? Pretty simple. Again, you're gonna have to build this out of steel and probably a liquid vent. I didn't do that, but that's the basics of this. Now, a way that this is implemented quite a bit is if I were to actually pump in water that is which is like 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about how much a water vent will output, is about that temperature of water, right? So I have super hot water that's coming in, and then I'll say I want my water to be 80 degrees, which is reasonable, right? What I can do is if I hook this up, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you're not just going to have this be a loop. Chances are you'll have a water storage somewhere. This will just be temporary, where this will go and hook up to, right? So it'll look something like this, right? And then I can use this water wherever. I need to pump this water into up here, right? Not down here. That's not where I would need it. Let me quickly just throw down a water vent, a water geyser, right? To show you what I mean, because this water just turned to steam. I don't know why I didn't expect that. So if I go ahead and take this over to here, power it, okay? See that this will output water, which is, let's give it a minute to output. This will output water that is 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is far too hot. And when it gets into the system, as you can see, it's going to go into our water supply 133 degrees, which isn't what we want. And there is a very simple way to combat this. And I'm going to show you how. What you're going to need is a liquid valve, or no, a liquid shutoff, my apologies. And you're going to need to go like this and output it in, right? Except you're actually going to need to do it one out, so that we have a little bit of room, just like this. And then I think they need power. They do need power. That's so weird. Okay. And then you're going to need to automate this. You're going to need to get a liquid pipe thermo sensor, right? And you're going to need to throw this right on the pipe right before the output. So you see right before the output, it's right there. Then you're going to want to set this to what you want your water to be. So probably the same as what your other one is. And then we're going to need to hook it up with automation. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did down here. And we're going to take from the input, and then we're going to drag it back along into our system, okay? So does that make sense? So you're going to go from the input, and then you're going to, instead of going from the input into our storage, or from the input and then the output into our storage, we're going to go from the input, and then we're going to output it back into the system. So you see, it detects that it is, sorry, below. You're going to need to change that. It detects that it's not below 80 degrees. So it's going to send it back through here and back through the system. And then eventually, if I speed it up, you see the water is slowly getting cooled down more and more. 166, 165, 165, it's going slower, 164, there we go. And eventually it will reach 80 degrees or whatever you set it to, and then it will output into your system. So that's how you tame a water geyser. I just showed you how to tame a water geyser. Super easy. You just need this tiny bit of automation to ensure that the water that goes into your storage is the correct temperature and that it's not too hot. So that is more or less how you do a thermal aquatuner. Now let's get into the much easier counterpart, the thermo regulator, right? So the thermo regulator is very easy. It only takes 340 watts, and it pretty much does the same thing. It takes an input of gas and it outputs it colder. So pretty much you can just take everything I applied to this, and put it onto the thermo regulator just for gas. But the thermo regulator is actually very nice because I'm going to show you one of my personal bases and how I use the thermal regulator in a way that the thermal aquatuner could not be used. Alright, so this is my big base that I've been spending a lot of time on. And if we come down here, right here, I have this little setup, and this is my kitchen setup. So down here, if I look at the room overlay, this is a kitchenette mods. It has everything that you need, and then this auto sweeper will suck up the stuffed berry or stuff like that, and it will send it through this conveyor belt, and it will put it into this room, which is full of carbon dioxide. And this thermal regulator, which has a gas pipe thermo sensor, just like the thermo aquatuner, which is set to above -75, right? So that makes it so that the hydrogen that's in here is very, very cold. What that makes it do is that makes it so that all of my stuff, all of my food is refrigerated and sometimes deep freezed. It bounces between it, right? And as you can see, it looks a little complicated, but it's not. It's the same thing, right? Input, output, and then the input goes back into the output via a bridge, just like before. So it has two inputs, so just in case it turns off, just like that, it will still be able to get through. And that is just hooked up to a storage. And what that does is that makes it so that in here is very cold. -7 degrees, -50, -47. Down here it's only -12. So it's very cold in there, right? And then I also use it to cool down here a little bit where the food is being cooked. I might actually need to hook over here up. But anyway, the reason that I couldn't use a thermal aquatuner here is because when you cool down water to a certain degree, it will actually break the pipes, which is very bad, right? I had water spilling everywhere. It was very bad. But you can cool down gas pretty much as you'll need, right? Using the thermal regulator, and it also uses much less power. This is a much better setup than thermal aquatuner because I can actually cool it down to a good temperature, and these gas pipes won't break. They just simply won't. And it's not a very good setup because I'm just cooling it down using a Weezbor just because I'm lazy. They also don't output too much heat. See, he just picked up some food, and that food was cold, I imagine. I don't know. But as you can see, they are kind of flashing between deep freeze. every now and then. See, now they're on deep freeze. Some of them are on deep freeze, gristleberry, whatever. So this is a setup that you can use to do something like this, and I really like this because it's this beautiful kitchen setup. The person cooks, they grab their stuff, and then I have all of my farms and like my fish get sent right up into here, and it's very nice, and it's compact, and it's much easier than using a thermal Aquatuner. And as you can see down here, I have a water geyser with the same setup from before. It looks a little complicated, but it's the same thing with the liquid shutoff, the insulated, or the, what is this called? Liquid pipe thermo sensor, where this will pump in water at 202 degrees Fahrenheit, and that water will come up, and it will actually, I have kind of a buffer, it'll bounce between two modded storages. These are big storages, so they store 200 kilograms, and it'll bounce between here, come into here, and then get cooled down. And then what I have going on here is this little liquid pipe bridge thing makes it so that these pipes take priority. So as you can see, is right now this water is going in, but as soon as this water gets here, it will take priority. So see, this water will stop and it won't go in anymore, and the water that's in here will. That way the thermal Aquatuner is always running, and it's cooling down this water first before accepting new water, if that makes sense. That's just how I like to do it. It's nice and toasty here as well. And then I also have that thermal Aquatuner setup. This is a little bit more complicated. I made a video on the volcano setup, but pretty much same thing. Thermal Aquatuner in a room full of steam, with a steam turbine that sucks in the steam when it gets up to a certain temperature. Same thing that's over here. It's pretty simple, it's pretty compact, and it's pretty good. So more or less, that's how you use a thermal regulator and also a thermal Aquatuner. They're both a little bit different. They both have their purposes, but they both are very useful in your game, and you're gonna need to use them eventually, especially if you want to do stuff right, you know, especially if you want to make your base work properly. See, and if we look at this water, beautiful 67 degrees Fahrenheit, nice and cold actually. And then we get water from down here for some reason. You have my big puddles. Anyway, this will conclude the video. I would like to thank you all for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, and goodbye.